back at Treetops Park here. Today I'm going to talk about euthanasia. I'm going to talk about the realities of euthanasia and then the absolute denial of the necessity for euthanasia. It's all right. Let me give you my history with euthanasia. Really, it started first with my own animals, my personal pets when I was a teenager, and having to make the decision whether or not to have the first one that I can remember is my orange tabby cat. We called him, what do we call him? Morris. We called him Morris the cat because he looked like that Morris the cat on the TV commercial. And he was a cat that, out at my father's business there on the military base, I would feed him, like we had milk in there. I'd give him milk, pepperoni, ground beef, whatever. And the cat learned to trust me, and eventually I ended up taking him home to be my own little kitty cat there. He was gnarly too. He was a male cat. I had all kinds of scars, like just battle wounds all over his face and head. His head was big from the scar tissue and stuff. So anyway, I had to make a decision to euthanize that cat because of his condition. And because I had already been involved with medical stuff, making a decision like that is from a clearly clinical perspective. It's such a simple and easy decision to make that you wouldn't believe how it is, because there are certain medical facts that you take into account, and then once you realize whatever those facts are that the animal ultimately end up with, the animal's going to continue to suffer. Suffer is the key word, and deteriorate. And it's suffering from whatever the medical condition is that's incurable. Then the decision to prevent any further suffering is pretty straightforward and easy. Now, I'm not saying that it's not an emotional decision and that the moment of euthanasia is not emotional. It is. And I'm going to get into more of my experience, but I'm just sharing with you my very first euthanasia experience as a teenager. So years pass. I become a paramedic. I'm an emergency medical technician, firefighter. I leave that and I end up in Boulder, Colorado. I work at an animal shelter there. And during my interview, I'm asked during my interview, can you euthanize animals? Will you be able to do euthanasia? And I had never really thought of myself euthanizing an animal before. And so I don't know. I worked through it. I told him, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm a former paramedic. I can stick a needle in a vein with efficiency, so that won't be a problem. I'm a hunter. I'll hunt animals where they're killed during the hunting. So I can stick a needle in an arm, or a vein, should be more general, and I can kill an animal when I'm hunting. But I've never had to kill an animal simply to make space in the animal shelter. Now that changes things in a very interesting way. I got the job. I became a euthanasia technician, a certified euthanasia technician. I believe it is still a 16-hour class where they teach you how to do the different types: intracardiac, intraperitoneal, intravenous, corneal reflex. I'm just trying to generalize that. They teach you all of these things that you need to know about euthanasia in order to perform euthanasia in a humane way. And so, as I recall, the the teaching materials said euthanasia was a Greek word meaning good death. And so let's look at that for a minute. There are many, many people out there who don't view death as good in any way whatsoever. So much so, they're willing to let an animal suffer to end its life rather than face the facts that an animal needs to be euthanized. Okay. Maybe, I think we'll come back to that. So here I am at an animal shelter, and I get my euthanasia technician certification, and 1 or 2 days goes by and parvo breaks out in the shelter. If you don't know what parvo is it's a curable disease that can be dealt with in a home setting, fairly straightforward. However, in a kennel where you have multiple animals, it's not just a bunch of dogs. You have to think in terms of herd type population situations there. Every animal's in close proximity to each other. They share a central ventilation system. The air conditioning or heating system in that building picks up air from one part of the shelter and then distributes it out through the rest of the parts of the shelter. And parvo can be spread rapidly. And it's also difficult to remedy in an enclosed environment like that. The parvovirus has like an outer shell that's even difficult for chlorine to kill, and it can last out in the environment for long periods of time. And then it's not until it gets inhaled and then it hits that receptor, it locks in, and then all the bad stuff starts happening. In a shelter situation, and I'm just going to use this as the example, is one dog came down with parvo. We tested it, came up positive for parvo. We euthanized that dog immediately. And then within hours, the dog to the right, the dog to the left of it, and the dog directly across from it had parvo. We put those dogs down and started testing all the rest of the dogs. The other dogs, it had already spread to the other dogs outside of that little immediate circle there. And so instead of letting that continuously spread throughout the shelter, the decision was made to euthanize, to stop this stuff right where it was, to euthanize every single dog in the shelter. Yeah. So, myself and this guy that taught me how to do animal control was a former military guy, worked with military dogs. Nobody else in the shelter said that they could do it. They were like, we can't do that. We can't kill all these animals. So, I'm just going to call him T. T and myself figured out how we were going to do it, and then we started stacking bodies. By the time we were finished, we had an efficient system. We had kennel technicians. We had all the kennel technicians out there start getting dogs on leashes and lead them into the room as fast as we could call them. And it took us probably, I think, about an hour, or maybe a little bit over an hour, to euthanize every dog in the shelter. That's the puppies, everybody. Not everybody. All of the dogs. By the time we were done, when I was in the mode of that, it was just, all right, bring in the next dog, load up the syringe, restraint, get a vein, get that drug in, set that dog down, check it in a moment, make sure that use your checks that you're taught in your euthanasia technician school, and then bring in the next dog. By the time we're done, I looked over and I really wasn't paying that much attention to it. There was a stack of bodies as high as my waist. And we already had the crematory turned on, because the euthanasia room was connected to the crematory. And I just looked over at that site, and in a way, I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my gosh, look at all these dogs we just killed here to stop this parvo spread. And both T and myself were taken aback at the stack of bodies there. It was very sobering. I really don't have a word to describe it. And this thought came to me. I was like, you know what? I know that this is going to give a lot of ammunition to these people who are anti-euthanasia, and they don't think any animal shelter should be doing euthanasia. This thought came to me in there because we're putting these animals. As soon as we finished all the euthanasia, they were going straight into the crematory. I had this thought. I was like, my goodness, this is what happened in World War II. This is what people were doing back then. This is horrific. And that didn't change my mind about euthanasia, but let me tell you what an experience that was to have that realization. I'm like, shit, we're almost no different than what they were doing back then. I mean, we had a purpose for what we were doing. We were trying to stop the spread of parvo in that shelter. Because if you don't get parvo out of a shelter, it will be a recurring problem that will plague you for possibly years. All right, so there's the painted picture there, and I'm not anti-euthanasia to this very moment because there is a necessity for it. Okay, so after having worked in animal shelters here and there throughout the United States, I have euthanized, I forgot what the number is. I sat down and I figured it out one day and my head almost blew off. It is in the thousands. When you euthanize 5 to 6, even 7 days a week, and you're euthanizing 20 animals every day, that's when you start the morning shift. Like when you work in the morning shift, that's what you do. Here it gets even more crazy. I became the shelter, not the shelter manager, but the kennel manager of an animal shelter. And my first job for the day was to go around and decide who died. Who's going to get killed today? Thank goodness, like, I'm an emotional person, but when it comes to clinical thinking like that, all the emotions just go away. And it's just about gathering facts. This animal's been here for this many days. We know that we're going to have this many more animals coming in today. We need space. That's the reality of animal shelters, people. But that's, you shouldn't look at that as an excuse of why you should just turn your dog loose down there at the farm or down at that dead-end street where you think nobody lives, because they can't fend for themselves. They haven't been brought up that way. There's not enough food sources out there anyway. So don't use that as an excuse. If you go and dump your animal somewhere, you're one sorry human being, and I wouldn't mind putting you on the euthanasia table. And I don't mind saying that because I'd rather the dog or cat or whatever be here than you, if that's the kind of human being you are. So now you know a little bit more about me. All right, so let's move to the thousands of euthanasias in the animal shelter, to also working for a veterinarian who has a house call practice. Excuse me. And part of her practice are in-home euthanasias. Well, let me go back a little bit. I'm going to go back to doing euthanasias in animal shelters. There are a couple different kind of people who do euthanasias in animal shelters. There are people who really just don't give a crap about animals, and they don't, in my opinion, give an animal a euthanasia, a good death. They just treat the animal like a piece of meat, kill it, and it's and then it's off to be disposed. Every euthanasia I ever did, I gave the animal love, compassion, and tried to make the last moments of that animal's life special, at least for a moment in time, so that it did experience love and compassion. Yeah. That part is not as easy as it seems. So let's get back to doing euthanasias with the veterinarian in people's homes. Those were truly special euthanasias because the animal was in the person's home. They were surrounded by either the one the one person that loved them or their family, and it was whoever was there was actually participating in it. The family members could hold the animal while they're being euthanized if they want, whatever it is. And then we've done some really just truly special euthanasias where this lady used to walk her dog out there off a place there in Miami Beach, and there's these little parks that either faced, well, they all, as far as I know, faced sort of to the inland waterways there, okay, like the Intercoastal and some of those spaces. But there was one little park there she used to take her dog down to, and there'd always be, or not always, but there would be a dolphin there occasionally. That's one of the cool things that you experience here in Florida. If you're in certain places in the waters, the dolphins will be there. And also, like, they'll have their young in there. I'm not sure what they're doing. It seems like they're just kind of staying out of the ocean. I don't know, maybe there's sharks around, whatever. So anyway, we went to do this euthanasia, and she wanted it done in that park. And we went there, and we're on the edge of the water, and the dolphins showed up. Oh man, what a special moment that was. She said that dolphins would come over when the dog sits at the edge of the water there and look at it. Well, the dog's there, the dolphins come up, and they stayed there until the dog was euthanized. We were right on the edge of the water. That was an unbelievably special moment. And so, yeah, that was really, really amazing. Okay, so, wow, that's intense. So, we did many euthanasias like that, hundreds of them. You have to understand, euthanasia is something that's taking place every day because animals are in these situations where they're either going to suffer tremendously for the rest of their life, or they need to be put down. And I don't really even like to use the word put down, or even put to sleep. They're killed. I mean, that's just a real word to use, not the glossed over, pretty, fluffy, wrapped in flowers, whatever word. The animal's killed, but they're killed in a good way, so that they don't suffer. And I know there's going to be a bunch of nutcases come over here and start saying that it's impossible to do humane euthanasia, but I would say to that person, how many have you done? What's your experience in the field? I've done it in the back of our rescue trucks. I've done it out with the veterinarian, and thousands of them in a shelter. So what's your experience exactly? Is it just your stupid opinion or your ignorant opinion, whatever you want to call it? All right, so the reason I'm making this video was because all these interesting euthanasia posts kept coming across my Facebook feed there, and I'm like, what the hell is this all about? This is really strange. There's all this euthanasia stuff coming up suddenly. So I see all these people react to it differently. There's people who work in animal welfare who understand the grim, cold reality of euthanasia and the necessity of it. So that's veterinarians, vet techs, your kennel technicians, people that work in animal shelters, people who work in the real world and deal with the reality of it. And I'm not saying all people like this that are in these no-kill situations, but here's the thing about no-kill. Don't you get to look good virtue signaling for everybody? Aren't you just so special that you get to say we're no kill, but the other place over there, they kill animals, trying to make them look like they're the bad guys when they're actually probably better than you? Yeah, think about that for a minute. You're living in denial while the animal shelter's like, we got a problem. We can't build a high-rise downtown Miami and fill it full of animals. It doesn't work that way. You'll hear the term, we can't manufacture, we can't make enough good homes for these animals. And I see a lot of adoptions go out of shelters. They're adopting them to people who shouldn't have an animal. A lot of animals get returned to animal shelters because people didn't realize what it would take to take care of the animals. And so, to the no-kill shelters that are doing the finger pointing. Now, there's not all no-kill shelters, and I don't even like the term no-kill, but that's what they call themselves. So they can virtue signal, and they can get you to donate to them through your emotions, while they're finger pointing at the animal shelter who needs funding more than they do. Here's the thing about no-kill shelters. They provide housing for animals until they're adopted or until their death. Animal shelters don't have that luxury. They do. So what I like to call no-kill shelters are limited intake shelters. Limited intake shelters, they can say, well, we're not accepting any more animals. Then now what? If the person can't keep that animal anymore, for whatever reason, the reason is immaterial. If they can't keep the animal anymore, so now they got two choices: take it to the county, city shelter, whatever, I'm generalizing that, or dump it. Well, you know, I already said what I think about the dumpers. So, put them up on the euthanasia table. So now they got to take it to the city or county shelter there. And who's getting a bad rap for having to put animals to sleep? Because they got to make space. They have to make space. You can't take a kennel that's designed for one dog and put 5 dogs in there indefinitely. That is inhumane. That is cruelty. Despite what your ego and your emotions tell you, all right? So, there's just a reality of that. So, I really didn't think I was going to go there on this video. I was actually going to make another video about that specific, but I made 2 videos in one. This whole thing with this pitting the limited intake shelters with the open door shelters, like the city and county shelters, it's wrong. It's immoral. It's wrong to try and make your shelter look better than any other shelter out there who's actually a full service shelter and who's willing to take those animals in and at least give them a chance at getting adopted. But the reality is there's more people bringing in animals than they are adopting them. What is your solution to do that? If you want to spend millions of dollars building a facility, let us know. We'll help you promote it. But what I'm saying is you can't live in denial. You have to face the facts that euthanasia is a necessity, especially when the animal's suffering. There's no question about that. Anyone who denies that is a nutcase, in my opinion. There's something wrong with you. All right, so when it comes to making those euthanasia decisions, I've already said early, when I'm making a decision for an animal that's not mine, it's particularly easy because all I have to do is look at, does the animal meet the criteria for euthanasia? If the answer is yes, then we moved right over to the euthanasia box. If it's no, then it's not going to get euthanized, all right? But making that decision for your own pet, your companion animal, your horse, your dog, your cat, your bird, whatever, is a whole different thing when you don't have the experience, let's say, that I have, and it can be a hugely emotional decision to euthanize your own animal. And the question is always in the back of everybody's mind. Everyone asks this same question when they're doing euthanasia: am I making the right decision? Am I euthanizing them too soon, too late? But it's always, I have not met anyone who's made that decision that didn't ask that question or mention it in some way. They may say something like, I don't know if I'm making the right decision. So I understand how that can be very difficult. That's where you want to rely on your medical professionals. You want an opinion from them on what's going on with your animal. If you're not sure about that, you go get a second opinion from a different veterinarian. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But I think you should rely on their experience to make that decision, because it will help you make the right decision. Okay? But don't beat yourself up about it, and don't take forever to make the decision. Because remember, I know you love your animal. You don't want your animal to suffer. I know that. So, boy, this is a hot topic. I'm sure this is going to stir a lot of anger, a lot of hate, a lot of love, a lot of support. And that's okay. I'm a pretty tough old guy, so I've had some insanity dished out my way, and it just rolls off me, just so you know. All right, have I spoken on this topic enough? I hope that I was clear about it, and that, here's something I didn't say. I don't believe when an animal when a euthanasia procedure has been done properly, I don't think the animal suffers at all. But I do think it's important to make sure the person that's doing euthanasia is either, they have to be qualified. So I'm not going to say an either this or that. They need to be a qualified person. And don't do any of this insane home euthanasia remedy internet stupidity that I see on the internet, where they say, oh, you can give your dog this, or you can give your cat that, and then you can do your own euthanasia at home. No, you can't. And if you do it wrong, it's probably illegal. In the state of Florida, there's only the curriculum that they teach in the euthanasia technician program is the only legal way to do certain euthanasias in Florida. All right? For instance, animal shelters, they have to be certified, and they have to follow those protocols that's listed and it's talked about in that curriculum there. Oh crap, I was going to say something else and I kind of lost my train of thought there. Tell your animal what's going to happen. Don't be in denial about them. Don't say, hey Fido, everything's going to be all right. No, Fido, we're going to put you to sleep. We're going to do this procedure on you. I take that cue from when I was a paramedic. Even if I'm having an unconscious person who I think can't hear me, every single thing I was about to do to that patient, I would explain to them what I'm about to do. Okay, I'm going to give you an intravenous. I'm about to stick you in the arm, and then I'm tape. Even when I'm taping it up, I'm going to put some tape on you. Even just the most basic of things, I'm explaining to my patient as I'm doing it to them. Now, I can't remember if my instructors taught me that or if medics taught me that. It seemed like I remember hearing that in my EMT school from my EMT school instructor, who I have the highest respect for. So say it. Say what's about to happen. Explain it. Or have your medical professional explain to the animal what's going to happen, whether you believe they can understand it or not. I think they at least understand intention. All right? Do it with compassion and love. yeah, I feel like I've kind of run out of. I think I've run out of things to say there about the topic. Boy, I sure hope I haven't forgotten anything important. And I hope this opens your eyes up to euthanasia, and then it will help you make a decision if you have to in the future. But don't wait. Don't wait until they've suffered for a year or for 6 months, whatever. Get a veterinary opinion, and then don't expect them. This is I knew I was forgetting to say something. You cannot ask your veterinarian or medical professional to make the decision for you. What should I do? Don't ask them that. Don't ask them what you should do, what decision you make. That's got to be entirely on you from an informed place where they've given you the options of what's going on there. And don't put them in that position, because they're not gonna respond to that. They're gonna be like that. You have to make that decision. Those are probably the exact words they'll use or something similar, but you have to make that decision. But be as informed as you possibly can. That will give you peace of mind. Okay? It has me over the years. Do I want it that I didn't have to euthanize all those animals? Well, of course I do. But I can't change. There's certain things I can't change. I can try and educate people as much as possible, but I can't make ignorance and stupidity and all the other trappings that go with that go away. There are still people who insist on having a bunch of puppies or kittens that they can't take care of, and then dumping them off at the shelter, or dump them off down at the end of the dead end there. Boy, yeah. That's it. We'll see you in the next video. All right.